there's one phrase that just came to mind that I've always used for buyers and sellers, but I think now it's time for me to use it myself. And it's leave no doubt. Leave no doubt that you're doing everything possible to grow your business. In a buyer's perspective, right? It's like leave no doubt that they know that you're doing their absolute best for them. And in a seller, leave no doubt that you're doing everything to get their home sold. But in this context, leave no doubt that everything that you could possibly do, you're doing.
What's going on, everybody? It's your brother, your uncle, your favorite realtor's favorite realtor, coming to you with another installment of the Equity Podcast. And for today's podcast, I have a very, very special guest. I'm excited to unpack and learn more about his story and ultimately share it with you all as the audience. And just in case you were wondering, I did wear this shirt, Bearded Hustlers, because my man here, Mr. Sergio Nazzaro, who has an epic beard, by the way, is a fellow bearded brother joining us today. So how are you, Mr. Sergio?
Dude, I'm so good. I love that shirt. I appreciate you having me on here. I saw that thing and I was like, I gotta get me one of those.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is a buddy of mine out of Philadelphia that runs this company. I'll put the information in the show notes of this podcast for my other bearded connoisseurs out there and those that love beards. But Sergio is one of he doesn't know this, but he's one of my best friends in my head from social media. The dope thing about the world that we live in now and the fact that we are not geo-tied to where we are as far as the relationships that we build, I think is really, really impactful in the world that we live in. And Sergio is a gentleman who I follow on his Instagram, and I'll put his information in the show notes of this podcast. And I've just been a fan from afar of how he runs his plays from a real estate standpoint, how he leverages social media, and the transparency that he brings to real estate on a daily basis. So Sergio, please introduce yourself to the audience. Let us know how you got into real estate, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, I mean, first off, like I also look up to you. There's this moment I remember where I saw one of your videos and I was like, that is clean. And I was like, how did you make it look so good? And you're like, you immediately responded. You're like, give me a moment. I'm at a showing, but I'll respond to you with the settings on my phone. And I changed it and it's been off to the races since. So like, it's cool to know that you're across the country. I feel like I know you, even though this is the first time we've ever like talked face to face like this.
Absolutely.
Listen, man, I got into real estate back in 2015. And the only reason I got my real estate license is because I was in between semesters for grad school. And the only way the military would give me money was if I was in a class. So I had to pay for my rent. I was like, well, I gotta go to school for something. So I got my real estate license and I started in 2015. And one of the reasons I wanted to get it was I always felt this calling. I've always felt a calling to serve people in a different capacity. First, it was the military. Then it was being a personal trainer. And then I got into real estate, and it didn't hit me until I got into real estate why it was so important to me. But all of the things that had led me to the moment of why I had to join the military stemmed from this story of when we moved to Texas in about, I want to say it was right around 7th grade when this happened. So we moved there in 5th grade. This happened in 7th grade. My parents took bad advice from a real estate agent. And he had told them to basically, hey, fudge the numbers on how much you make on your mortgage application. Because at the time it was stated income. They did employee verification. My dad got fired from his job. We lost the home that we were going to buy. We had already put a notice that on the rental we were in. So we were homeless for about 3 months. And that was the first time I watched my mom console my dad. And that just hit me. I'm like, damn, this is one of the biggest investments somebody's going to make. And there's one other person who just wants to get a quick paycheck. And because of that, that led to all these other things that happened in my life. And so that's how I got into real estate. And that's why I've been so motivated to make sure that we start to change the paradigm in this industry.
Love it. Love it. Well, I want to take a moment, by the way, and thank you for your service. I was not aware that you were part of our armed forces. Where'd you serve, or in what capacity of the military, if I may ask?
Yeah. So I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 2007. So I was a captain. I ended up being an officer in the Air Force. I was supposed to go to pilot training. I was stationed out in Utah for a bit. Then I was stationed out in LA when I decided I do want to go to pilot training. Down in Colorado Springs, I went to Afghanistan for 7.5 months. And then when I got back, I got out.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for serving in our armed forces and keeping us safe. So, you are based in, where exactly are you based in? Is it Utah that you're based in?
No, I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. Mile High City? Is that how they call it?
That's right. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, before we jump into real estate talk, what are your thoughts on Deion Sanders, the Buffaloes? You know, him being the new head coach and all
Coach
that. What are your
Prime,
thoughts?
man, I
Coach
love Coach
Prime.
Prime. He's the
Yeah.
man. Like the way he carries himself, like on many levels, his spiritual level, his connection with God, like the way that
Right.
he leads men, the way that he treats women, like the movement that he made, not only down in Jackson, but now that he's coming here, like I'm
Right.
hyped on him. And like I'm hyped on him because like he's bringing football back to Colorado, but he's also doing it in a way where like when you watch some of his presence on social media or that documentary on Prime, and you see the
Right.
way like he's talking to these boys that are turning into men, like he's setting
Absolutely.
the example. And I think, man, like I'm a huge fan of who he is, what he
Yeah.
stands for, and how he's running the show up in Boulder.
I love it. I love it. So Sergio, what brokerage are you with? Are you with any of the big boxes? Where is it that you operate your real estate business out of?
Yeah, I'm with a local company called 8Z Real Estate. We're here in Colorado, right? And so
Nice.
we span the front range from Colorado Springs up to Fort Collins and all the way up into the, the fun parts of Colorado and the mountains. And so we're just local to Colorado. We're about 160 agents and just
Wow.
recently became part owner of the company. So I'm here to stay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Thank
That's
you. Thank
major.
you.
And you know, this podcast is called the Equity Podcast. So I love that you are actually taking your career by the reins and taking the next step in your career by being a broker owner. So that's super dope. So you know, a little bit about the background between myself and Sergio. So we're both super into wellness, you know, fitness and being the best version of ourselves possible. So Sergio is big into CrossFit, if I'm not mistaken, and talk to the folks here about, you know, why your overall physical health is important for you from a personal standpoint. And I have to assume that there is some translation or transition into your business. Walk us through that.
Yeah. Listen, so going into the Air Force Academy, there's this break between my prep school year because I wasn't smart enough to get into the school directly, and my freshman
Right.
year. And it was during that middle year, or during that year, that summer, I ballooned up, man. I was up to 192 pounds at 5'6". And
Come on.
for all you out there, I was fat, man. Like I was not doing so hot, right? Like I wasn't looking so good. And so there's this moment where I was like, man, I gotta get my act together. Right. And so I ended up, starting really my fitness journey at that point. And when I got out of the military, I found CrossFit. And what I liked about CrossFit is just like, it's not the craziness of it. It's simply that there's like a level of intensity, a level of inward leadership that you have to have in order to navigate these workouts. Like you learn a lot about yourself when you're in the pain cave. That's what I call it. Like when
I
you're just
like that. The
struggling.
pain cave. I like that.
Yeah. And so you put yourself in these arenas and like the voices and the thoughts and the negative self-talk, they become really evident because you don't have a choice but to face them head on. Right. And
Right.
they're there before you get to the gym. They're there while you're at the gym. And then they start to arise the night before you go back. And so what I found is like my physical fitness is super important to me because as Coach Prime said, right? Look good, feel good, play good. When you play good, you get paid good. And I was like, I
Yes,
like
sir.
that. Right. And so fitness has always been really big for me because I want to feel good in my skin. I want to have the longevity in my life. I don't want there
Right.
ever to be a restriction on what I'm capable of doing. And so
Mm.
I was always making a focus on it, right? Like with my health and my nutrition. And then at 34, I had a heart attack. And
What?
I had a heart
A
attack.
heart attack,
And
heart attack.
yes, sir.
Wow.
I was having these chest pains, and my wife was like, you should go in for a stress test. Went in
Yeah.
for the stress test that induced a heart attack. They did an angiogram on me. I almost bled out on the table. Like it was a
Oh,
mess.
wow.
And it wasn't one of those moments where they're like, you need to change your diet, you need to change your all this type of stuff. Like I was doing all the things. It was
Right.
stress management, right? It was like my second year
Mm.
of real estate. And like you're in the middle of it, right? In the beginning of it, it's hustle, grind, hustle, grind. You don't really know
Absolutely.
any better. And that stress just ate at me. And so now on the back end of that heart attack, right now it's like my responsibility to show up as my best version of myself in my business and in
Right.
my life is stress management. You get that down, you're solid.
And I think that is key to your point. You know, when you choose a career like real estate sales, man, you are always in an active state of stress, to your point, and stress management is key, not just necessarily for us as the professionals, but also for the clients that we serve, right? You know,
Yeah.
you're in the middle of when the market was white hot two years or so ago. I don't know how the market is right now in Colorado, but at least here in Georgia, you know, homes are sitting for, you know, about 30 to 45 days, if it's priced correctly and everything looks good. But man, 2 years ago, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, first and foremost, and we're coming out of that, and we're in a multiple bid situation because inventory is low. So my clients were stressed. I'm sure your clients during that
Mhm.
period were stressed, and we had to be the cool head that prevails in this business, because if they see us stressed, what's that going to mean? That
A
two
hundred
stressed
percent.
yeah, two stressed people are definitely not going to be lead to anything positive. So I think that physical activity, and as you mentioned, putting yourself, you know, that time under tension that they talk
Mhm.
about, I think it produces a more mentally fit version of yourself in addition to being physically fit. I mean, you're a military guy, so no one has to tell you anything about discipline, but even when we're just moving through this thing called life, we can't lose our way. So I'm glad to know, man, that you were able to bounce back, you know, physically from your heart attack in your early 30s. Wow,
Yeah,
quite
man.
quite the story.
And there's
Hmm.
part of this too, right? Like that you're saying, you know, the funny thing about like athleticism, right? Like sports, like athletes
Right.
prep for a game and they know when that
Hmm.
game's going to be. And in that game, they show up, then they come
Right.
back out and they're in that preparatory phase, right? So they can rest and recover, they can get ready for the
Right.
next game. But in
Right.
life, in business, we don't know when the next game's going to be. So we're
Right.
constantly in this state of preparation and, you know, modulating in and out and working our skills because we get a few games a year. And when those games show up, like you have to be ready. So that's why like
Hmm.
this daily work of like putting the time in on your body and your mind and your health and all of that, like you're just
Right.
preparing yourself for the next game.
I love it. I love it. So to that point, let's talk through some of the ways for your business, because not only are you a producing agent, you are a co-owner of your own brokerage. What I mean, you're a busy guy. So I mean, what are some of your walk us through? You know, just a how you keep your productivity and your business organized. So what is your schedule from morning, the moment you wake up until the end of your working day?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it
Mhm.
ebbs and flows, right, with the season, but I'm up at
Right.
3:45, so I get up pretty early,
Wow.
and that
Wow.
gives me time to really spend some time in meditation and visualization. That's where I really start my day. I do
Okay.
that usually with a cup of coffee and some water, so I don't fall back asleep.
Right.
But that then rolls into what I like to call stacking. So part of the coaching company that I started become the standard. We have this thing called stacking, and that is just like a series of prompted questions that guides you and then leads you kind of like through whatever came up in your meditation. And at the end of that, it gives you take an action out of that for your day. So that really kind of
Okay.
grounds my day. From there, I go to the gym, work out for about an hour, come back. And the reason I'm waking up so early is because I want to give my wife time to then go to the gym. So she's going to go to the gym when I get back. I'm going to watch and get to hang out with my son Luca as I get ready. When
Okay.
she gets home, that's when I really get into work. And so I have a productivity tool that I like to use. So the way I think about this is every Sunday I plan out my week,
Yeah.
right? Like I have my all the possibilities of the things that I can do. And then I create a hit list. And that's a hit list from Monday, Tuesday through Friday. And usually that
Okay.
hit list is filled with things that are important, but not
Yeah.
urgent. Right. So like I'm
Okay.
trying to pull the future stuff into today because like the regular stuff that I'm doing in my business, right? Like making the phone calls,
Right.
connecting with people on social. I like to do
Right.
these things called real estate reviews, which is basically just a glorified CMA.
Okay.
Follow up with my clients, you know, and then posting content, right? So that's kind of like my morning, right? Those are the things that I'd like to get done. And then that hit list, right? These are the activities that I know that like they're out in the future. They're not
Right.
super urgent, but by pulling them to today, they make my business gain some momentum. So an example of that would be planning a client appreciation party, right? Like that's way in the
Mm.
future. I don't have to think about it. But if I start it now, then I can start to get that stuff planned out. And maybe I could do two. Or another
Yeah.
version of that would be I'm starting this new marketing campaign to my clients where I'm asking them
Yeah.
for a referral through a charity of choice program where if they send me a client and we successfully close on a home, I'll donate
Yeah.
$250 to a charity of their choice. So I have to build out the content and the email campaign and all of that. Urgent, not important. Like if I don't do it for a year, not a big deal. But if I do it,
Right.
how does that accelerate my business? And so it's this modulation between those two things from the time I start working around 9 until I usually finish around 5:36. And I stop, I put my phone on silent mode right around 6 o'clock. Like I don't do any more real estate after that. I'm really trying to
Right.
be with my family. And I tell my clients that, I tell the other
Yeah.
agents that. And I just
Yeah.
always preface it with like, hey man, nobody wants to make an important decision when they're tired. Let's save this for
Right.
tomorrow. And so that's kind of been the mode of operations for me. And then I take Sundays off.
I love it. I love it. And it's funny you mention that because I run a team out here as well, and my office hours are literally from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Simply because work-life balance is incredibly important to me. And you hear, of course, we're still on a little bit of that hustle culture, grind your face off. And I realize now, especially the older that we get, you've got to do honestly more rest the older that you get than the work. Meaning that if you are working smarter and not harder, well, maybe you can get 8 hours worth of work done in 4 hours, and then you have four extra hours. You've bought back your time, if you will, which is the goal anyway of entrepreneurism, right? Or we
Mm-hmm.
all should just be, working a 9 to 5 and call it a day. But you have to put those stop gaps and not be fearful, because you may think, oh well, if I cut off my time at 6, this client's not going to want to work with me. But if you educate the client, if you educate your other agents that you're working with, they will know out of the gate that you are, one, a disciplined individual. Two, if it's something that's very, very important, you better get that information to me before time. And three, ultimately, that your time alone or your time away from work is the most important thing for you. So I think that that's an incredibly amazing modus operandi, as they say, to
Yeah.
run your business. And I'm sure you've still seen growth even though you aren't working until 11 o'clock at night.
So one of my coaches, he talks about playing the game above the game. And what he was saying is like, listen, that hustle and grind culture, that's not entrepreneurship. That's being a hustler. Nothing wrong with it, but you have to recognize that's not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is taking that one level higher,
Right.
delegating the work, leveraging the activities that you know are more important. And so when I started to operate that way, when I stopped trying to like pound a square peg into a round hole over and over again, my business took off. I mean, I went from 31 transactions my first year,
Yeah.
36 transactions my second year. And I was like, I can't keep doing,
Nice.
I like almost quit. And then the last 3 years in a row has been 52. And I've worked
Wow.
less, right, than I did before. And I'm less stressed. Spend more time with my wife and my kids. She recognizes it. Right. And so
Yeah.
like you get to a spot where you're not operating out of scarcity, but you feel like this abundance. And like a lot of new agents are going to be like, yeah, but that's you. I'm not in that state of business. I get that. But there's parts where you can start to change that narrative and be in control of your process. That's going to
Yeah.
allow you to move in that direction. I think it's huge.
Are you a real estate agent looking to jumpstart your career? Join our online agent network and gain access to the support and resources you need to succeed. One of the most effective ways to attract clients in this industry is through social media. And I can tell you, in my entire time as a real estate professional, I have not knocked on one door, and yet I've still generated several $1 million worth of sales per year. And our team is here to help you do the same thing. Click the link in today's show notes today or visit iamthetribe.com to learn more about this amazing opportunity. Now back to the show. And I think that it's a mindset thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you can or you think you can't, you're correct. I think they said Thomas Roosevelt said that.
Yep.
But it's all about your approach to your business. You definitely cannot go into, if let's just say real estate, a career in real estate. You can't go into it with a 9 to 5 mindset. You literally, and this is me speaking as a vegan, you got to go kill your food. If you don't, if you don't kill your food, your family is going to starve. So for me, it's my driving force of getting after it. I've mentioned, candidly speaking, that, the place I live, it's just not the safest to go door knocking, for example, on a regular basis. So what do? I show up on camera as regularly as possible because my next client right now is in a high school chem class or a college communications class right now, and they're going to eventually be ready to buy that home, and they're going
Hmm.
to find me more than likely through social media. So pivoting here for a second, Sergio, you're doing a lot on social media, man. What are some of the reasons? Because we've been licensed. You've been licensed for longer than I have, but you have really, as an OG real estate guy, you've taken to social media like moth to a flame, man. So, in this world where the OGs really don't do a lot of social media, why was that something that was so important to you?
Man, that's where everybody's at. I go after the attention, right? Where's the
Right,
attention, right? The thing is, like, when you walk into somebody's house, their TV
right.
is on, but they're still looking at their phones, right?
It's
So
true. It's true.
it's like, where's everybody's attention? And especially during COVID, like, it was even more prominent. Like, everybody wanted to be
Right,
connected. And so the
right,
news source, right, has gone away from mainstream media because who knows what's going on with that, right? And so news sources have
right,
become Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of it, right? And
right,
so to
right,
me, I was like, listen, I saw the leverage that social media content can make. I think I
right,
posted a video, and this is in the very beginning. It got like 500 views, and I was like, "Whoa!" Today,
right,
that's nothing, right? But it got 500 views, and immediately my mind went to this question: are you ever going to make 500 phone calls? I was like, "No."
no,
Cool. Then I'm going to do this because I can do this in a way that allows them to consume it. It allows
right,
me to tell stories. I can market to different people, talk to different people, show my personality, right?
right,
Because when you pick up the phone and you hear like a dude on the other end, you're like, like whatever. I don't
who
really want
is
to talk to this
this?
person, right?
Right,
But when I
right,
see your face and I see how you act and I see you smile and I see your
right,
energy, I want to connect
right,
with you. And so I saw that the power in storytelling there. I was like, cool, I'm going to use this. And not only am I going to tell my story, but I'm going to tell the story of my clients because somebody's going to look at them and be like, I'm in that situation. If they
right,
can do it and Sergio helped them, why can't I do it? And I'm just connecting the
right,
dots at that point, right? I'm playing a little bit of a puppet master, right? And
right,
so I just
right.
saw like the power of it. And then I saw Gary Vee and I was like, yep, all right, here we go. That was it.
Yeah,
What about
yeah.
you? Why did you get into it?
Man, because I didn't want to knock on doors.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my background, just a little bit of background on me, guys and girls listening to this podcast, and if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. It's greatly appreciated. My background is actually in film. So I'm a film guy in a previous life, and so I was it was one of those things, with social media. We all have our insecurities. We all have the things that we feel like could keep us from being successful on camera. And I had to choose my uncomfortable. Living here in Georgia, as I mentioned, it's hot as all get out, first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost. But to your point, I'm not realistically thinking, oh, I'm going to start my day by knocking on 500 doors. For one, that's not a practical use of my time. And again, that can be a security risk depending on where I am. So I feel like the new currency or the new way to market your business is going to be through digital door knocks. So
Mm-hmm.
to your point about having 500 views, for example, on a video, I don't want to speed past that because that's actually really good even now. Because for one, that's 500 digital door knocks where the potential client came to you. So apparently they were scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or wherever they found your content, and they said, huh, let me see what this guy's got to say. And that registered as a view. You cannot quantify the amount of scale that you are able to create through social media. And the thing is that, we are, whenever it's any kind of app, and Sergio, I know you'll agree with this, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, whenever something is free, you are the product, right? So I'm a big student of Gary Vee. I've got all his books. And when he said attention is currency, I really took that to heart in all areas of my business because we
Mm-hmm.
do more than real estate on this end. But realizing how I can be in bed with my wife watching my favorite show on Netflix, and my business is still actively being promoted on YouTube, YouTube Shorts, Instagram. And it's there, I don't want to say forever, but for as long as these platforms remain in place, which are absolutely free, by the way, you can't quantify that in any capacity to be able to grow your business at scale anywhere else for
Mhm.
absolutely free. So that's why I do it, because
Love it.
it's more comfortable for me than knocking on doors here in the South. But with everything going on, Sergio, and all of the gloom and doom that we're always dealing with, it's always, doesn't it seem like it's always something? 2 years ago was a pandemic. Now it's what's going on in Washington, and who knows what'll be next. How are you navigating all that, right now with your clients?
Yeah, listen, I think you have to meet your clients with where they're at,
Right.
because everybody's going to be a little bit different. And so the one
Right.
thing that I've recognized is that like my fear may not be their fear, and their
Right.
fear may not be my fear. And so I think you have to seek to understand before you start to navigate the situation. And so,
Right.
right, a lot of the questions are around, well, interest rates, or is the market going to crash, or how does a
Right.
recession impact home values? And so it's taking those pieces of information. And in my experience, I show, I don't tell. Like I'll show you the
Mhm.
data. I'll show you
Right.
what's happened in the past, right? I'll show you
Right.
what's going on. I'll show you your
Right.
payment. I'll show you what happens when you do a price, or when a home gives you the opportunity to either do a price reduction or a credit, or you refinance. And so we
Right.
start to put these together, these like, these guidelines. And so we take this big issue and we start to break it down. And I can give you some data here to solve this, some data here to solve this. And then if I have a concern that aligns with your concern, then we start to
Right.
talk about like, all right, well, what is the probability of that happening? Right? What is the probability that the market's going to crash?
Right.
Nobody truly knows, but you start to
Right.
look at some of the data, and depending on your area, especially here in Colorado on the western slope, where it operates as a coastal community because we have the Rocky Mountains,
Right.
historically we've been very insulated. So you start to have
Mhm.
these conversations, and people are able to see this. And so now it's either we have a opportunity to go out and shop today
Right.
or sell today, or we've put together a list of metrics that, hey, when these things happen, I'll reach back out and we'll have a conversation. So I have clarity. They have clarity. I have
Right.
clarity. And then we also have a plan. And I think that helps alleviate a lot of the stressors that comes along with real estate.
I love that. I love that. And I think that it's key to when you put that plan together. And I have to assume a little bit of your Air Force background is what comes into play, or maybe you are naturally like that. It helps, to your point about stress. It helps bring everybody's stress down, because you've created a plan for a number of different variables. I'm a big Jocko Willink guy. I like him a lot, and so I've got his books, and he talks through, whatever the situation is. If you've got a strategy and a game plan for it, you're not stressed, because you've run through that situation. For folks in law enforcement, for whatever, for example, they walk through certain scenarios. If something happens with the perpetrator here, you do this. If you see a civilian here in this situation, you do this. And so it's having that plan in place that I think that's what's going to be necessary in this new normal. The real estate professional that does not have a plan, you really don't have a business. How can I trust you as a potential client if you can't walk me through what could happen in XYZ situation, right?
Yeah.
With the data points to support it, to your previous point. So I think that's game changing, man. And I know your clients, they probably love you for all that.
They do. And there's this thing that I operate under. It's called the three C's: clarity, control, and confidence. My
I love it.
responsibility is I have a process. My clients are going to know what that process is. They're going to have clarity
Yep.
into that. Anything I know,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to know. My
Right.
responsibility as an agent is to give them all the information that they need, because I'm the one with the plan, but they're the ones making the decision. And so that
Right.
control aspect, if they're controlling all of the decisions, then it's my job to make sure that they are educated enough to make all of those decisions. And so what I
I
found is
love
like when
it.
they have that clarity and they have the control over their decisions based on educated information, that when they're signing on
Yes.
that dotted line, they can feel confident in what they're doing. And so I've
Right.
broken it down to that little triangle, and it's that simple.
Clarity, control, and what was the third C?
Confidence.
Clarity, control, and confidence. You know, I'm gonna have to rip off and duplicate that, brother. I
Hey
love
man,
that.
steal it, take it.
Clarity, control, and confidence. I love that. So you mentioned this on your social media, and again, guys and gals listening, be sure to give Sergio a follow. Let him know that you found him from this podcast. His content is always dope. And you've recently talked about, and I think you kind of alluded to it earlier in our conversation, becoming the standard. Walk us through what is becoming the standard. I think you mentioned that it's coaching.
Yeah.
Is it specific to like life coach, real estate coach? What is becoming the standard?
Yeah. So become the standard is a performance coaching, right? And
Okay.
it came from my screw ups, man. Like, listen,
Okay.
I was in the middle of crushing real estate. I had the best
Okay.
year of my entire life in real estate. And yet I was a professional success and a personal failure. All right. You look at the
Mm,
relationships in my life, my wife and I were fighting. We weren't getting along.
yeah.
My family, they're like, hey, you're in the room, but you're not in the room. My health was failing. I was angry, man. I was angry. I was so angry. And I was like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
Right. And I came to this moment when I realized like nothing that I'm making in my business matters without the people I love the most. Nothing that I'm
Mm,
doing in life matters if I don't have my health. And so what
mm,
came from that is this idea that you can have it all in life. You can have a body that's elite no matter how old you are. I'm not talking about a six pack. You want a six pack, get a six pack. But I'm talking about you have a
yeah.
body that is elite. It allows you to do
Just not a
whatever.
dad. Just not a dad bod.
Just not dad bod, right? And then you can have a connection with like yourself. Like you know who you are, what you stand for, and you can
Right.
listen to your intuition, but you also have a deep connection with your creator, whoever that is for
Right.
you. And then you have
Right.
these relationships with your wife or your kids, right? Like your relationship with your spouse doesn't have to be this flame that burns out. It should be this flame that continues to catch fire and you get stronger and deeper and more loving. Your sex life is great. And like
Right.
you are the leader for your kids. And yet all of that is
Right.
built on the back of your business. And you can
Right.
operate at a high level across all four areas, but you have to have awareness and attention on not only where you're at, but also where you want to go. And so become the
Love
standard is
that.
simply the idea and the concept of you can have it all in your life. You simply have to put in the work. And so that's what I'm in the pursuit of changing this hustle culture and allowing
Right.
people to have it all, right? Have it all.
So, can anyone become a part of becoming the standard? How does one connect with that? And we're going to put all of Sergio's
Yeah.
information for joining that, if that is something that one could tap in with after this podcast. We're going to put all the information in the show notes of this podcast. But how does one become the standard? How can one be a part of becoming the standard?
Yeah. So we on my social platform, you can sign up for a one-on-one coaching call. It's just an
Nice.
introductory. We'll have a conversation to see if it's a good fit. Right now, I am fully booked. Right. Thinking about doing another launch in September.
Okay.
So I think the best thing for
Congrats.
people to do is let's have a conversation. Let's see if you're a good fit. And then if you are, let's talk about the path to get into the coaching program that will be, released in September.
I love that, man. And you know, folks listening, mentorship. If you see all of the high performers out there, whether it's football, basketball, entertainment, wherever, all of these individuals have a coach, right? And I'm of the mindset that you are the sum total of the individuals that you surround yourself around on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. If you hang around a bunch of billionaires, 8 times out of 10, you have a strong likelihood of becoming one. If you hang around a bunch of losers, whether these are friends or, whatever, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a propensity to become a loser. So I think that, situations and services like what Sergio has, I think that's definitely something that's needed in the world that we're coming out of. And the fact that he can do it remotely, even though he's in Colorado, you might be in Puerto Rico, to still be able to get that high level mindset training, that high level performance training to be the best version of yourself, whether you're in real estate or you're a culinary chef, you can be the best culinary chef that's out there. So I love that. So switching gears here for a moment, Sergio, in our real estate business, you mentioned earlier that there are ebbs and flows, highs and lows. Tell the folks about, one of your favorite moments in real estate or, personally, and then, inversely walk us through how you overcame one of your lowest points in real estate or personally.
Yeah. I think that there's something really special about I had this friend and we were looking for homes. And this is why it's more than real estate, y'all. We were looking at homes and I get a phone call from one of her friends being like, hey, so and so needs to stop her showing. Her husband just committed suicide.
Oh,
And
man.
I was like, oh, all right, yeah, not a problem at all. So, obviously I respect the space. I give it whatever it is.
Right.
I get a phone call from her a few months later and she's like, hey, Sergio, I need to get out of my house. I can't be here anymore. My husband took his life here. This is too hard for me. And this is in the middle of like the hottest market of all time. So we
Yeah.
find this house that she loves and she's all in on it. And it comes down to I think there's like 17 offers and we're the top two.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there and like I'm pretty good at not wearing other people's emotions, but I was in this one, man. And like I'm
Yeah.
calling the agent, I'm doing everything I can, and we get the home. And I'll never forget that phone call when I called her and she picked up and I told her, and like we both cried. And
Wow.
it allowed her to close a very emotional chapter in her life and start something really beautiful. And so, like,
Right.
out of all the homes that I've helped somebody with, like that one, just I know where I was at when I made the phone call. I know how I felt. I remember everything. Right. And like to me, it was like the most impactful thing that's ever happened. Um, on the flip side, there's always some dark in this as well.
Yeah.
So earlier this year, my wife and I had a miscarriage just probably a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we told my parents on Sunday, that we were having a baby. And then
Yeah.
Monday morning, Lizzie and I found out she had a miscarriage. So it was like,
Right.
you want to talk about the highest of highs to the lowest of lows.
Right.
That moment happened and my real estate business was rocking and rolling, like it's moving.
Right.
And I'm sitting
Right.
here being like, I can't even focus on this.
Right.
Like, how do you take something that is so visceral, so painful? It's only not only just like the loss of the potential of what could be. You're watching your
Right.
wife go through it. You're thinking about how
Right.
your parents and other people that you've told are going through it. And I'm just
Right.
sitting there being like, damn, I don't I don't want to do anything.
Right.
And so I sat there, I meditated, I prayed to God. I was sitting there and I was like, what do I do? And I turned the camera on and I went live on Instagram and I shared my story of what it's like to manage a miscarriage from a
Yeah.
male perspective.
Yeah.
And what came from that dark moment. So I guess this is also a great moment. I hate to give you two, but I'm going to give you two. What
No
came from that
worries.
dark moment was this overwhelming love from my brokerage of people that were willing to help me as we were navigating this. People
Yeah.
put their arms around Lizzie, right? And like being like, hey, this happened to me. And like all of a sudden, like
Wow.
30 different people talking about their miscarriage stories. Like Lizzie felt embraced and loved, like we felt loved,
Wow.
right? And
Wow.
so like it was like this dark moment that has then led to so many deep conversations with other people that have struggled with miscarriage, struggled with loss, struggled with all of that.
Right.
And the whole thing has allowed us to not to normalize the situation, but to
Right.
normalize the conversation about the situation. And so like
Right.
it was this really hard point where I'm just like, damn, I don't know what to do. But what
Right.
came out of it was something that I couldn't even imagine.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful. And I could tell, during that period that something, because I was on that live, when you did that, and I was around the time that we were, trying to get our schedules together to shoot this podcast, and I wanted to be incredibly super respectful, for that, that recent loss, but I can tell, and I see it now, that you are a better human being, not necessarily because of tragedy, but through the tragedy, you have become a better human being. You are now, as you mentioned, you have another story to tell, because the things that we go through, good and bad, I'm a man of faith as well. And I realize whenever things happen in our life that we have those, why God questions, I realize that, the wisdom of it is that ultimately we're meant to be a shoulder to cry on, lean on for someone else when they deal with it, because, you know, it's it's tough to lose life, period. But for something that close to have happened to you, I can't help but know that there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals that that are blessed through your story. So thank you for your resilience through everything. So
Honestly, man, for
um,
a moment there, I forgot that we were on a podcast. It felt like we were just talking. I forgot that
yeah,
this is going to be put out. So I'm glad that this is also going to be sent out to whoever's going to hear it.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And in this podcast we talk about real estate, but we talk about life. We talk about the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, the pretty and the not so pretty, right? But I think that as we navigate this new normal, as we navigate the doom and gloom, you've given some really good strategies for how you help your buyer and seller clients. Talk to that real estate agent, Sergio, that you know has gotten into this business. Maybe they have only had just a few closings, or maybe no closings at all, and they are hearing now and seeing now that it's more expensive to buy a home, of course, because of interest rates as of this recording. Give some insight from the trenches, both literally and figuratively, for those real estate agents that are struggling right now on how they can pivot in this current environment.
You got to get back to the basics, man.
Yeah.
You watch these football teams, they lose and they lose and they lose. And what do they say? Got to get back to the basics. I mean, hell,
Right.
Tom Brady had a quarterback coach, Tim Hauser, right? And he would always fly out and get lessons from and he was one of the best, if not the greatest quarterback, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And yet he was working on the fundamentals all the time. And so I share that because in a market where things are going to be a little more difficult, you have to put in more work. And I'm not saying you have to work harder, but it's going to
Right.
take more work and more time to get deals and things to come through. You're going to have to start to
Absolutely.
connect the dots for sellers and buyers. You're going to have to start to really harness and build the relationships. You're going to have to
Right.
do things that maybe at one point you let go, open houses, door knocking, if you want, social media. You're going to have to tap
Right.
back into that. Right. And
Right.
so the reality is this is a game that the people who are consistent with the work and the
Right.
ones who stay patient are the ones that will succeed. Right. And as we're recording this podcast, I just went off a big surge of selling homes, right? I think I had 5 listings, and now I'm in a little bit of a
Nice.
lull, right? I'm in a lull, right? My buyers are a little bit down the road and my sellers are a little bit down the road too. So I have some time. And so I don't have any money coming in. And what am I doing? Getting back to the basics. I'm making the phone calls. I'm following up with
Yeah.
people. I'm scheduling those face-to-face appointments. You have to stay in flow with your clients because at some point they're going to transact. If you're not
Right.
in flow with them, then you don't know their story. And if you don't know their story, then you can't listen to that pain or change. And without that pain
Right.
or change, then you won't know when the time's coming up. So stay in the flow through phone calls, text messages, social appointments, and just be patient. It'll pay off.
I love that. I love that. And double down on the marketing, double down on the
Yeah.
video content. It's a twofold benefit being on YouTube. Are you on YouTube, Sergio?
I am. Yeah, I got
Okay.
YouTube and YouTube Shorts going. I mean, I'm everywhere. If they'll
I
let me
love it.
on there, I'm coming, baby. It's
Yes,
like
sir.
whatever.
We're gonna put all your information in the show notes so folks can subscribe. I didn't know you had a YouTube, so I would for sure subscribe. But I think that we have to realize that specifically to YouTube, right? YouTube is the only platform that will pay you as a business owner to get potentially millions of eyeballs absolutely free. I don't know any other platform, advertising, billboard. You could, if you gave me a billboard in Times Square and you gave me a high performing YouTube channel, I'm gonna take the high performing YouTube channel all day because I don't have to pay for it. I just
Right.
have to show up on camera, be consistent, be informative, and have a little bit of personality so that my tribe finds me. But if you have yet to, this is the only thing I would add: do everything Sergio says, and in addition to that, double down on your video. That is the new normal. To your point earlier, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, that is the new ABC, NBC, Fox, right?
Yep.
And you got to, especially if you haven't had your first deal, YouTube and social media will make you look like a professional, even if this is your very first year in real estate. If you show up on a consistent basis, heck, creating content based on your study material for your license, which should still be fresh in your mind as a new agent. And if you've been an agent for a while, going back to basics, aka going back to your study material, inform individuals for what is a survey, what's the benefits of a home inspection, what are just you can it's so much content that's out there. You can rip off and duplicate what I do, what Sergio does, but you have got to, in this new age, do all of the basics, and you got to show up on camera on a regular basis. You got to push through the insecurities. We all got them, but you got to realize that your next client more than likely isn't going to know the thing that you're insecure about that's kept you off camera for all this time. They're going to start to know you. They're going to start to like you. They're going to start to trust you. Sergio has some really cool tattoos. I only got one here, but oh man, you got a lot. I love it. I love it.
And here's the thing, like you talk about insecurities. I used to be insecure that I didn't have any hair. I was insecure about showing my tattoos, right? Like there's insecurities, but there's one phrase that just came to mind that I have always used for buyers and sellers, but I think now it's time for me to use it myself. And it's leave no doubt. Leave no doubt that you're doing everything possible to grow your business. In a buyer's perspective, right? It's like, leave no doubt that they know that you're doing their absolute best for them. And in a seller, leave no doubt that you're doing everything to get their home sold. But in this context, leave no doubt that everything that you could possibly do, you're doing.
I love it. I love it. No, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And clients will appreciate you for it. Other real estate agents will appreciate you for it, because that level of transparency, telling your story, for example, when you could have kept that stuff bottled up, you didn't have to put your recent tragedy on social media, but you did. And because you pushed through that, someone is going to be saved. Someone is going to be free. Someone is going to want to work with you because that may have been their story. So they know Sergio gets us. Sergio knows what we've gone through. So this has been a powerful, powerful podcast. I hope those of you listening and watching on YouTube had some key takeaways. Let us know in the comments of this podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, what are some of the ways that you are going to implement more structure into your day-to-day, more mindset and meditation, prayer, disconnecting from the day-to-day hustle to get still and get peaceful. It will literally keep you from growing old. You'll always remain youthful. You'll always remain in a state of flow, as Sergio says, and you'll always be productive, is my hope. Sergio, do you have any parting words, and how can folks, after you give the parting words, how can folks connect with you?
I heard this the other day from one of my coaches, and he says, no matter how good it is, or no matter how bad it is, you're one decision away from being it completely different. And so just know that wherever you're at in your story, one decision, one action, one choice can change your life forever. Y'all can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, Sergio.Nazzaro, Sergio.Nazzaro. It's the best way to get a hold of me. And if you want to chat, shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to hop on the phone and share whatever it is that you want to learn about.
I love it. I love it. And one final question that I have for you that I try to remember to ask all my guests, Sergio, what is one interesting thing about Sergio that you're into, outside of real estate, that folks might not guess? Like, are you a bungee jumper? What is something, some peculiar thing that's your jam outside of real estate that folks would never guess?
Yeah. My dad used to be a head chef, so I love to cook a lot. And like we cook a lot at our house. So that's a big one. And then on the other side of that is I can eat a Chipotle burrito in under a minute. So I don't know if that's, I'm happy to show y'all, but that's kind of like my claim to fame.
I love me some Chipotle, brother. I love
Can't
me some
stop.
Chipotle. Love it. Love it. All right, you guys. Well, until the next podcast, I am your gracious host, your uncle, your brother, your favorite realtor's favorite realtor, signing off. Thank you so much, Sergio, for being a part of the conversation today.
Thanks, brother.